Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the Misfit Gamer Studios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode, we have a new race coming from Desmar Sama called Diamond Dogs. Other than that, we don't really have any other details for you, so we're going to kind of just jump right in. Des, I hope you're excited for this. All right, so today we have from Desmar Sama, Diamond Dogs, a new race, species, whatever you want to call it. All right, so we have a fearsome creature in a just luxurious leather trench coat, but I'm assuming it's a trench coat, like a highwayman's jacket. I love that. I'm loving the jewelry in the head. The purple aesthetic is always nice.
Very demonic looking with the glowing eyes. I'm curious if that's
I'm
a
loving
part of
just the. I'm loving the when it comes to like werewolf type creatures. You usually get either the full wolf form, like a dire wolf form,
sure,
or you get the semi-bestial form, like this, like the cross form.
Yeah.
But it's usually like overly exaggerated, usually huge ass shoulders.
Yeah.
And it's like humanoid-ish, but it's
Like
more like a dog on its hind legs than it's a human.
What was that movie?
Like Underworld?
Underworld.
Yes,
Underworld.
exactly.
That's what I was thinking of. Yep.
I'm loving the fact that this is this cross form. It's this, more humanoid than it is creature. But I also love the fact that we have clothes on it. I don't know why. I just love this visual. It is so much different than we're used to seeing with this kind of a creature. So I'm digging the visual already. You see this come across you in like like if I saw this thing just like come across a tree like in the middle of like our camp and he just like walked into our camp, I'm putting my hand on my weapon, but at the same time I'm like, okay, bro, either you about to attack us and you got like 5 people in the shadows, you're gonna ask for my soul, or you about to sell me some like black market shit.
Yes.
Like does he not look like he's about to sell you some shit that like no you can't buy anywhere? Like
that's
I got a deal.
Kind of very fair. That's
I got a deal
fair.
only once in a lifetime.
Oh, that's crazy.
It's a tier 100 skin for Fortnite Battle Pass. So yeah, I'm looking at this dude and I'm just like, yeah, he's either gonna sell me something that I shouldn't own, like a cursed item, or he's gonna try to make a deal for my soul, or it's already too late.
It's
like, that's
probably
what I'm
already too late.
All right, so let's see what we got for the Diamond Dogs. Oh, no lore at all.
No lore on this one. There's been a couple, but
do with my description what you will. All right. So we have ability scores. Choose one of A. Choose any +2, choose any +1, or choose 3 different +1s. I mean, to be honest, the first 3 that popped to my mind are strength, dex, and con. Like immediately, right? Like that's just what it just pops into my head of what I would do. But I don't know. It just feels like for this race, it's like it should be one of those should be at least strength, dex, or con. Like a minimum of one of those additions.
Right.
Should at least be, because to me, it's like when you do a race, right? You're thinking, I'm born with this. Me and my kin are all born with the consistency. So how is it that, I feel like we should all have some trait in common. So if you said, hey, you can choose any 2 or any 3, but one of your choices always has to be strength, dex, or con, I feel like that would lean more into.
I would be mad at that. Like just saying that one of your choices has to be strength, dex, or con.
That's all I'm asking, right? Is like whether it's a +2, +1, or a +1 in 3 different ones, but no matter what, you always have to choose one of those 3, because that's how the racial feats would actually work. It would really, I feel like racial feats wouldn't divide equally among all traits. They would tend to focus, especially on physical.
Honestly, I'm gonna have to go back and look through that, but I kind of don't mind the idea. Imagine if every race had to have one of one or one of the other. You know what I'm saying? One of your stats is going to be a physical and one of your stats is going to be a mental.
See, I wouldn't mind that.
I feel like, especially when it comes to your race, like either you're going to be a race of people who are probably more book learned, or you're going to be a race of people who are probably
more, I think that's what the idea was in the ADMG, is like putting it in there that when you want to select a range of ability scores, consider what the race is going to impart naturally and lean into that. Right. And it's not about restricting the player's choices. It's about being more connected, because again, what I look at is when you give me a race of a bunch of cool stuff, but I can choose between 10 races and all of their ability scores are just my choice.
Sure.
It means that I'm only min-maxing for the ability it gives me, not for the experience. And doing something isn't so much about limiting it, it's more about providing that experience. With something like this, I would expect a physical dominated attribute. So it's not so much saying
Be right
you
back.
have to be limited by one of these choices. It's more of a consider that is the thing that's coming with this. So creature size is medium. Creature type, you are humanoid, so totally makes sense. Your speed is 35. I'm really glad to see that. I was really expecting at least a small speed boost there. Honestly, I wouldn't even mind 40. I mean, especially when you're dealing with anything kind of like a dog or cat, I would definitely absolutely say that plus 10 is more than fine for a default. I don't, plus 5 is nice for anything that has some sort of like extra agility, but when you're talking about dogs and cats, I'm totally okay bumping that number a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think this might just be a 5th edition thing, but like adjusting someone's base speed by more than 10 can lead to significant, I don't want to say out of balanceness, but like especially at like early
Abuses.
levels. Yeah, you could do some craziness. Like imagine a monk with 40-foot base speed getting it increased over and over and over again throughout what they're doing.
I don't mind moving forward. I know that you mentioned that, yeah, if we go 10 or any higher on movement speed, it starts to get a little bit broken. But, sometimes 5 is just doesn't feel like enough. One
Sure.
extra square sometimes just doesn't feel like I'm really getting much more out of it. So,
Yeah.
all right. So now we get into some attacks. So with the Diamond Dog, we have a bite. So your Fang Maw is a natural weapon, which you can use to make unarmed strikes. If you hit with it, you deal piercing damage equal to 1d6 plus your strength modifier instead of the bludgeoning damage from a normal unarmed strike. So I'm 100% okay with the piercing damage.
Sure.
1d6 plus your strength modifier is awesome in an unarmed hit. I'm not gonna be mad at that at all. So it does have dark vision, so it can see in dim light within 120 feet of you as if it were bright light, and in darkness as if it were dim light. You can't discern colors in darkness, only shades of gray.
Interesting. Not very many people get dark vision out to 120 feet unless they're from the Underdark.
Yeah, that's huge.
Like Drow and Duergar and some of the other like under races are the only ones that I've ever seen with that good a dark vision. So
all right, so we have now a new ability called Rampage. When you reduce a creature to 0 hit points with a melee attack on your turn, you can take a bonus action to move up to half your speed and make a bite attack. So almost kind of like Rampage, almost kind of like a Bloodthirst, where like you just take it down and then you're just like filled with like an adrenaline rush where you could just like immediately get to another character if you can, and then just keep it going. And can you imagine chaining that? Just ripping through like minions. Can you that's actually dope. I don't mind that because again, all you're allowed to do is make a bite attack. So you'd have to only be going through minions to be able to chain it. But just the simple fact of being able to get an extra attack because you took a character down, I love that. Now, is it a lot for maybe a starting feature? It might be.
I actually don't think so, especially because it only triggers when you drop somebody to 0 hit points. Like, I don't think you're going to be spamming that at lower levels.
No way.
And once it gets to higher levels, you're only able to use your bite attack, which is a 1d6.
And yeah,
which doesn't
you're not
scale
spamming,
with
again,
you.
unless you're going against minions, you're not spamming.
Exactly. And so it's not going to be devastating at higher levels, and at lower levels, it's not going to be triggering that often. So I think that's actually super cool, especially if you can work with your DM to get something later on to make that bite attack scarier. It could be super valuable.
Oh, yeah.
Later on. You could be like a cool thing that you have. And again, if you're using this super crazy damage on minions, like that's not the end of the world, And so if you're like taking down 2 minions a turn instead of just 1, like, okay, that's really cool for you. But at the level you're going to be able to do that.
Well, and
it's
again,
fine.
I'm not suggesting that this is where it should be or what it should do, but I could easily see this as an option.
Oh.
I can see this as an option of some DMs could make the alteration where either it's whenever you do the hit points, you can move and or attack another creature. But you could just throw in, I could see for cinematics, you could throw in, you can only move in to attack a creature. So instead, if you like down a creature to 0, and then you would use your, your half speed to just like give distance so you can go heal. Imagine if you couldn't do that. Imagine if it did say you can move half your speed to attack another target.
I would
Therefore,
actually,
could
specifically because it's called Rampage, I would agree with that. I would agree that the only time you can move is if a
attack.
creature is within your range and you can make that bite attack. If you
and
can't
that's where I was going for it.
If you can't make that bite attack, I'd say you just sit there.
You just don't get the extra. You do, because realistically, the idea is that, you know, you are lunging towards the other creature, and lunging and then just kind of stopping is more of, because I feel like the reason why is not so much that it doesn't make sense. It's to protect against the abuse, because it will just be used as a battlefield maneuver tactic and not for what it's intended, which is a
I'll say I'm okay with it if they're out of reach. Like if my half speed is 15 feet and you're 20 feet away, I would say I can lunge 15 feet towards you, even if I don't get
so the whole
bite.
point is you can't use it to disengage. You can only use it towards an enemy. So basically, Rampage would just have to say, when you reduce a creature to 0 hit points with a melee attack on your turn, you can make a bonus action to move up to half your speed towards another enemy.
I might even say the nearest enemy.
Or the nearest, yes, towards the nearest enemy.
And you can choose not to do it if you want to.
But if you do the movement, it has to be. I agree. That's what I was getting at.
Okay.
Yes. So Des, perfect. Des is back from ads. Des. Okay, so we just have been going over Rampage. So we like the idea. We love the idea of being able to use a bonus action to get an extra attack. But here's our official determination on this, or what we would suggest is adding the language that the bonus action to move has to be towards, and what we would suggest, the nearest enemy. So this way you don't get characters that abuse it to where it's like, hey, I killed this guy, I'm going to use half my speed to move the opposite direction so I can go heal, and I'm going to go behind the rocks. Yeah. We don't want that. This is like a bloodlust. This is
I'm lunging
Rampage,
at the next
you're
pissed.
So it's an option. You don't have to do it, but if you do it, moving half your speed, it has to be towards another enemy. And Kage suggests it should be the nearest enemy. It's a bloodlust. It's not tactical.
I'll say
this thing goes down, and you want.
It might not be tactical, but I will say it could be a scenario where the BBEG just killed somebody you loved, and there's a bunch of minions in your way. If there's a minion behind me, I'm not going backwards. And even if that minion is theoretically closer, like I want to go.
Well, that's a DM situation.
Sure.
Thematics. I'm just saying, like, look, if I'm here and I kill an enemy, and I got an enemy, the BBEG's over here, and then a normal minion's over here, I'm going for the minion. I'm jumping at the minion. I'm not jumping at the BBEG 100 feet away. I'm jumping at the minion 30 feet away. That's my mentality. Granted, yes, in the moment, you don't have to say, there's a minion that's behind you.
I would say,
I'm okay not forcing bad movement, but what I mean is, if there's two targets and one's 40 feet and one's 30 feet, and they're not completely the opposite direction, I should go for the 30 feet one. Again, it's a instinctual, I just killed this thing and it's a bonus action. I feel like I'm not really choosing. I just target and I go.
I would say, how do you feel about anybody within your range? Because like, what I mean by that is it's like, okay, if I have 5 potential targets that are within my range, right? And one of them is chewing on my friend, but a little bit further away from somebody that's closest to me, I can still move to them and bite them to potentially help my ally.
Right.
But
it's not technically the closest.
It's not technically the closest enemy.
Yeah. So so I don't think it's super important to say the closest enemy, but I do believe what you had mentioned is, at bare minimum, Rampage should say that you can take a bonus action to move up to half your speed towards an enemy.
Yes, towards an enemy.
It has to be towards an enemy. Then you can let DMs decide if it's the closest or not.
Sure. Like I definitely see an argument for it.
Yeah,
I definitely see an argument for it.
But it could be too pedantic, especially in situations with minions. So at bare minimum, it's just to remove the potential that they're going to use it to get a better tactical advantage that it's not designed for.
Sure.
Like either take cover or back up to the healer. Like
something that's outside of the concept of being rampaging.
Yeah, this is the whole point, is just like push them towards the enemy, right?
Yes.
Because if you're gonna use it, because the other option is don't. So far, that's been our only suggestion.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot.
All right, so now we get to the next ability, Gem Sense. Whenever you make an intelligence check related to the properties of a particular stone or gemstone, you are considered proficient in the check and add double your proficiency bonus to the check instead of your normal proficiency bonus. So
I'm thinking this is intended for history checks as well as arcana checks. But the way it's written, it would also imply to investigation checks.
I also don't understand necessarily why. I mean, I know we're called Diamond Dog, but I don't quite yet understand why all gems would be in
Sure.
our
wheelhouse.
Yeah, so
it might come with the description,
Yeah,
which
we're not
is
there yet.
kind of why I'm mad I put it at the end. But
I feel like it's just not helpful as if we don't have enough examples of when this would be used. And thus, is this one of those situations where it's great in a certain setting or a certain campaign, but how does this translate to why would I do this? Like in the average gameplay, what is this ability specifically going to give me, right? Like the next ability, make them shiny, you gain proficiency in Mason's tools. That's cool.
Sure.
Okay, so Desmar gives us something. Expertise is intended to be unique rogue feature. If another race, background, or class gets the same bonus, it always worded this way, double your proficiency bonus. Gotcha. So this is expertise.
Oh,
It's
sure.
just,
I will
guess,
say, I will say, bards do get expertise as well. But
which again, I don't like how they that kind of terminology doesn't make sense to wall it behind, right? Like,
I think expertise should be the articulation of the mechanic, which this is the same mechanic.
Exactly. Like it doesn't make any sense that only a rogue can be expert at something. Like they have backstab. Nobody else gets backstab. I don't care if you're behind the person, they don't know you're there.
And nobody else
backstab.
gets expertise as a part of their class and or subclass.
So like learn something as an expert, I feel should just be.
I genuinely think expertise should be a freaking feat. You should be able to take a feat to get expertise.
Yes, I think that too.
I don't know why that doesn't exist.
I 100% agree with you on that one. So
whatever's fine.
So I don't mind that this is giving us a bonus on gem related stuff. I feel like there might be a better way to word it, but I don't know what that way is. So I'm not going to ding Des for it because I don't know how to improve it. But when I read it, I do understand what we're getting from it. I just feel like when I read it, it takes me a few extra seconds to put it together. And I feel like there should be, whether or not there is, I feel like there should be a better way to say this. And if it's not Dez's fault. It's the terminology that 5th edition
I would say the biggest thing that I want to know is in what scenarios are you imagining using this?
That's what I was
i.e. Are you talking about history checks, arcana checks? Do you intend it to be included in investigation checks? Like, are all of those scenarios, because those are all of the intelligence-based checks that you can make. And it's specifically talking about intelligence checks, not attack rolls or anything else like that. So if it's just checks, is it meant to be anything that is tool related as well included in this? Is it meant to be, because you can make intelligence checks with tools, like with Tinkerer's tools and other stuff as an artificer and things like that.
You get proficiency in Mason's tools, but doesn't that already give you expertise? Like wouldn't that basically give you the double the proficiency with masonry tool too?
Only if you're dealing with gemstones, which I get. So like that in combination with Mason's tools is just like, yeah, if you're using Mason's tools for, does it say that you're proficient in?
Yeah, in proficient Mason's tools.
No. So whenever you make an intelligence check related to a property,
you're considered proficient and add double your proficiency check. So
proficient
you're considered proficient and add double your proficiency bonus. And that's because you don't say expertise. You say you're proficient and then you add double. That's
interesting. That's interesting because I'm thinking like, okay, if you're proficient in it already, you now get expertise. But this is saying, even if you're not proficient in that skill at all,
you're proficient and expert.
See, that's crazy to me because, like, imagine you hand me a set of jeweler's kits that I've never seen before in my life, and I'm just like, no, I can do this with expert. It's if I was already expertise in it, or if I was already proficient in it, if I already knew what these tools are. Oh yeah, I'm familiar with this. I get it. Just because I know gemstones doesn't necessarily mean I know.
That's fair.
Jeweler's tools. Right?
Again, because it's a racial feat, not a cultural feat. Like that's knowledge that you would kind of have to like learn, right? Like over time. Like that's a lot of knowledge. But I can also understand like some innate qualities that could come with your attunement or your affinity to gems, right? So could gem sense be something like, again, just give them like baseline appraisal? Like you can, appraise a gem within like 10% of its actual value. Is that something that's because I'm trying to think of like,
I would say the value of being able to do that is incredibly situational.
Well, but I feel like these are too. And that's what I'm trying to think of. Like, is there a way to somewhat more generalize what we can do with gems that makes sense for a race? Again, what am I born with, right? When you think about racial powers,
although I will say there are a lot of gems in material components. Yes, so being able to appraise those and being able to say, oh, this one's actually worth this much.
And that's what I'm saying. So it's like, I'm trying to think of like, what can you justify that you're born with that you have an affinity to gems for. Like I can understand like you're just born with like, again, you have extra senses, you have the dark vision, you have the sense of smell. Maybe you can just see like, you just look at it and you're like, I can tell this isn't clear. I can tell there's
Sure.
so again, if it's worth 1,000, you roll like, a D100 or you roll like a D20 and you see how close you could judge its
Sure.
So, if it's worth 1,000, you'll judge it between 800 and 1,200. Again, like you said, it's kind of situational. I mean, if you wanted to make this lean more towards like a spellcaster, you could even go one step and being like, you basically all gems work the same to you. So in a sense, like, but that would be way more of a spellcasting lean.
I would say just being able to, I feel like the largest value for being able to appraise a gem would be for spellcasters.
Yeah.
Now, granted, if I'm not a spellcaster, but there is a spellcaster in my group, it's still valuable.
True.
But
what could we do that would be more likely to be used in any gaming session versus, again, with this one, like, again, how many checks are you doing that are gem related? That makes me decide that's why I want this character.
Sure.
Or want this build. Because so far, outside the rage, gems aren't enough of a reason for me to want
I'll
this.
say yes, unless like I as a character plan on tying gem things into my backstory. Like I want to be a jeweler, I want to be a runesmith, or I want to be a whatever the case may be. Unless I plan on tying that into what I am, which is very possible because there are a lot of racial feats that work well when you attempt to tie it into what you are as a character. And I kind of appreciate that to a certain extent because it encourages people to add more to their character than just what the paper gives you, right? So it's like if I'm tying in the idea that my character likes to adorn all of their things with gems and maybe put certain magical powers into these gems to augment their abilities or whatever the case may be. Maybe that's just a thing that they want to do. Maybe they're an artificer that likes doing that. Like if you tie that into what you are as a character, I feel like that has the ability to make it more useful and bring more depth to your character. So
what makes sense for a race? Like again, what are you born with that your affinity with gems is going to like?
At the very least, culturally, you would have assimilated.
Yeah, something that's just imbued into your general everyday nature that isn't really something that you had to go out of your way to learn. It's just part of what you do. Like again, like speech. Like you just learn to do it as part of your everyday life, and that's just where you come from. But I feel like, yeah, it has to be something along the line. So far everything else is more like a sense, right? We have a bite, we have dark vision. I'm thinking it has to come along with like your ability to understand gems almost, right? But I don't know really how that would relate to day-to-day gameplay. Because I feel like anytime you want to like choose an ability, you don't want that ability to only ever be shown like once during the campaign. You want to, it may not be once every session, but you don't want to go more than like, a handful of sessions without being able to like at least have prompted the opportunity or remember, hey,
to whip it
should
out.
this be used? No, that doesn't, like, even if it never really like turns out to be useful,
you'll forget about it after a while if you don't touch it for a while. And
and with something like this, if gems aren't constantly being brought up, what are you doing with this ability? And it's more or less not so much like the ability has to be like usable throughout the entire game, but it has to be enticing enough to choose. Why would I choose this unless I knew that there's going to be a lot of gems involved in the campaign that we're about? If you said, hey, I'm doing a game, go create some characters. Why am I choosing this one if I don't know what I'm up against, right? That's my hesitation. So I'm trying to figure out with gem sense, what's the most often, what's the most common interaction that you get with gems? Like what's like 9 times out of 10, what's the most common interaction? Just treasure? Or is it magical items?
I would say treasure, and I say you get it from treasure, but its use is more towards spell, more often than not used for spell components. Because there are so many spell components that require a gem or jewel of a certain X number of value. And I other than just selling it, I don't really see them used for much other than that.
So then I would say my suggestion would then be alter gem sense to either be more of a natural appraisal, would be amazing for a racial feature. It's low level. It's something that you could use at any level. Like level 20, pick up a gem. I know how much that is. Hey wizard, you were looking for a 20 GP gem? Here it is. Right? Like that's super useful at any level. It's not game breaking. but it's something very, very unique, right? It solves it solves a problem because you never have to go find an appraiser. You know the gem immediately. If you find a thing of gems and you're like, hey, you were looking for one that's 500, here's one that's 500. The rest of these are only worth 100 each. Let's just go sell them, right? It makes gameplay for everybody at the table, including the DM, just faster. And it can be used in roleplay, right? Like you could use it to help out your wizard. You could use it to help out the party get more money. You could use it in dialogue. If you have that kind of really actor heavy kind of roleplay, you could be creative and be talking to some royal vizier and be like, do you know that's a fake over there? Be like, what? Yeah. Like, you know, this great statue that you have, you know, his scepter's a fake. And be like, you know, like, let's say you're trying to get in on this guy and you're like, he just doesn't trust you guys. He just doesn't know you guys. Like, he just doesn't want you. And you're like, does he have anything special in here? Like, does he have anything that's like a gem? Like, yeah, he has a bunch of stuff that has gems. I'm like, is anything fake? Can I get him on our side? You know what I mean? Like that could be an opportunity where you're like, yeah, there's actually a forgery over there. And just, I pointed out to him. I pointed out like whoever sold it to him obviously did him bad because I want to get on his side. And he's like, maybe I misjudged you guys.
For sure.
I'll give you a chance. Like those are the things that when I started playing as a D&D, those were the things that my DM did really, really well at, is rewarding players for those moments instead of hand feeding you well, he's not liking you, but by the way, you over there, you notice a gem that's not good and you have the idea that, you know what I mean? Like instead of spoon feeding it,
right?
I much more like when players have that idea that like, can I do this? Right? It's the yes and mentality.
Yeah.
So that's where I would see something like appraisal would be, I feel, more beneficial than specifically intelligence-based checks that are dedicated to gem-based situations.
Sure.
That sounds like I'm going to forget about it because it's too complicated, or I'm going to be trying too hard to find out, does it tick all the boxes?
Yeah.
But something simple to, you know, the price of pretty much any gem, that's fucking awesome. Like, again, when I'm choosing races, I can just be like, oh, that's cool. It's not like super great, but this I might deter me because I'm like, well, I'll never use that. But knowing the price of a gem, I know when I'll use that. The moment I see a gem, I know the price of it. Hell yeah. Like, I just like that shit. As a player,
even if you don't care about it a whole lot, it's still there. It's still valuable. Somebody else knows you can do it. They could be like, hey, tell me what price that is. Yeah, it's this price, whatever.
And hell, how many times are you going to buy something from somebody and you'll be like, are those gems real? Like, you're just going to throw it in there every time. Like, what do I know about those gems? You know, how much of that? Like, it's just, I don't know. I feel like that might be an easier way to explain it than having intelligence based.
I'm not mad at it.
And again, you have proficiency in masonry tools, right? So sometimes DMs like to do the thing where you can make something and then have a roll for its value. And then sometimes you'll have to go and get that appraised. Well, imagine you can make something and immediately know if you did good at it, right? It ties into this, again, make it shiny. It ties into this idea that if you're a jewelry maker, you'll immediately know the value of it.
So I'll say this, especially if we're leaning towards gems, I feel like it might be more advantageous to be a jeweler's kit than Mason's tools. Because I'm not really sure where Mason's tools kind of fits into this.
I agree with that.
This jeweled narrative, unless there's a different reason for it.
Yeah, Des,
unless there's a different reason for it.
Des, let us know why you chose Mason tools, but I 100% agree. Make them shiny should be a jeweler's kit. I think I was in my head, I was thinking jeweler's kit, and I just forgot that's actually a separate thing. But yeah, Des, let us know. Oh, it's stone and gems.
I think he's talking about gem sense. So when it says the properties of a particular stone or gem, so it's not just gems that we're talking about. It's also stone. So it could be obsidian. It could be it could be stone.
But again, I need more examples then of what we're thinking about when you chose to say intelligence checks based on stones and gems. What does that mean? Like, that's what I'm just trying to understand. Like, what, when we think of, when as a DM am I going to throw an intelligence check at the players specifically relating to, like, because that's a lot on me. Like you said, it's a lot on the DM to make sure that this power gets used. Whereas if you can just know the price and age of something, that could be beneficial, right?
Sure.
Those are the things I feel like I, as a player and as a DM, could use a lot quicker and a lot easier. Whereas if I specifically have to do intelligence-based checks as a DM, what if I never throw that at you? What if I just forget that that's your thing and I never give you a situation? It's like, or you ask as a player, hey, can I make an intelligence check for this? And I, as a DM, I'm like, I don't see the purpose of that. Like, I don't know what information to give you. That's what I'm worried about with this one. So that's what I'm having a difficulty personally wrapping my head around.
Okay. No, I totally feel that. I totally feel that.
Come across a dungeon. It appears ancient, having many inhabitants over the years. Can I make a history check to find out how old the stonework is? So again, why intelligence based? Why not just say you can make advantage on history checks? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel
if it is because, okay, so if we're talking about intelligence based checks, the only three that I'm presently aware of are investigation, arcana, and history. So
it's giving advantage, or basically giving double roll on
double proficiency on arcana, history, and investigation. So investigation is specifically to find. So maybe if you're in a room, in a old stone room, and you're doing an investigation check to find a secret passageway, you have expertise to find that secret passageway. If you are
I get the idea. I totally get where we're coming from with this. Then in that particular case, I would say, especially with everything else we've seen from 5th edition, it would have to be limited to 1. Because every time you get something like that, it specifically says feature intelligence, feature wisdom. In that particular case, it would be history intelligence. You know what I mean?
It is.
So giving the fact that all of those, just because they're all under intelligence, like the fact that all 3 of them would be boosted, I feel is more powerful than anything else, because normally only one of those intelligence-based feats would be improved.
I would say it is usually just the one, but it's also not usually restricted to a certain thing.
True.
So I think that's kind of the balance. Yes, you get all 3, but it's not going to be as often. So it's not going to be every single intelligence space. It's teetering for me. I'm not sure if 3 is too much. I'm not sure. When you do this, I will say this, it will get used a lot more often, because people will find a way to make it work. If you find say if you find like a magical gem, I want to make an arcana check to figure out what this is. Now I got expertise on that arcana check, right? I will say, especially if it's going to be all 3, it has to be that you are already proficient in. I do not think that you should be able to become proficient and expertise in it. Like maybe it'll be like a single tier, meaning like if you're not proficient in it, you have proficiency in it. If you are proficient in it, then you can get expertise. But
what would you be getting proficient in?
One of these intelligence checks. So basically, it's like if I am not proficient in history as a person, I would have a +2 if my intelligence is 14, right? Okay. This is gonna add a 6 to that roll. An additional 6 if I have a +3 in my proficiency.
But you get
a 6 that I didn't have before.
Right.
If I am proficient in it, it's only going to give me an additional 3 points.
Right.
So giving you that +6 when you are not already proficient in it feels like a lot to me.
So you think it should only ever give you the +3 regardless.
Correct. So basically you're saying if you're already proficient in it, then you get expertise. But if you're not proficient in it, then you get proficiency. That's what I would say, because that additional +3 or +6, and it's not going to be just a +6. Like at early levels, it'll be a +4. At later levels, it'll be a +12 that you just freaking get on that check if you're not proficient in it.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I've never seen the wording when it does word it like this. I've never seen it say proficiency and double proficiency.
I feel like, I haven't seen enough things in 5e, even though it does specify it's mainly for like gems and stonework. That's also not something that really 5e does well with, which is the layering aspect. I'm not against it, but I am having a hard time understanding whether or not it would be balanced for everyone else to do. Most things don't work that broadly. Intelligence checks on these subjects is not necessarily how 5e normally approaches it. So I don't know if I can suggest that for the universal approach. I don't mind it. I just wish it would read a little bit different. And I'm just going to say, I think it's too much for the type of feat that it is. Because even though, like you said, it is very specific to gems and stones, it's not all history checks. It's not all investigation checks. But that's still coming from just a baseline knowledge. Every single one of these things that has ever existed has this. And again, when I try to look at that from a lore point of view, it's just the same reason why like subletting subclasses exists. It doesn't make sense that only all of these people only ever did one thing with it. it's hard for me to believe that every single creature ever
Did all the things
born
with-
learned all three. Like so again, if it's an intelligence check and it's gem based, how did I get born with that, or how is that ingrained in me to an extent that it was not truly taught, but I just absorbed it, right? Like
Sure.
when I think of the fact that it's not coming from a class, it's not coming from any other choice. This is just something I have, and everybody with me has this. I feel like that might be harder for me to explain as a DM and put into a justified world. Whereas if you had it along the lines of, like one of those, like specifically Arcana, or even if Gem Sense gave you the choice, when you choose this race, select one of the three to have expertise in Arcana, history, or like, have expertise when it comes to gems and stones.
Yeah.
And then that way you still write it out like 5th edition. So when I choose this, I could be proficient.
I think that would be cool. I think that would be cool because, if I want to go be a caster class, I can choose Arcana. If I want to go be like a paladin or something like that, maybe it'll choose history or, whatever the case may be. But like gives you the opportunity to like do things a little bit.
I love the idea that it's focused on gems and stones and all of that. And I do see the value. But I have a harder time justifying it. So what I would love to see is just a choice. I wouldn't mind if Gem Sense just said, whenever you make, choose one of the three, you can have an advantage, or you can have this double proficiency when making intelligence, Arcana, intelligence history, or intelligence investigation when rocks and gems. And then that way, that person, it's always like, that's the role they know. And the DM knows from here on out, that's the time I know that you're going to pull it. If you're making an Arcana check and it has to be stone or gem related, we both know you're going to get the bonus, right? Sure. There's not going to be these, hey, is this one of those times? It's going to be a, hey, that's a gem. I'm doing this check. We both are solid. I don't know if that's any easier for people. I feel like that would be nicer, in my opinion, for a 5th edition blend. When we're talking about something being just picked up by anyone else, I feel like having a choice would make it a lot easier for both the DM and the player to be on the same page at all times. Yeah. I feel like you could actually get away with the loophole better if you just had one. Does that make more sense?
No, I definitely feel like it would help explain your expertise or specialization because you chose to focus on that aspect of gems and stones rather than just all things gems and stones. So
yeah,
I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that.
To find out what magic this gem is enchanted with. And that's the hard thing, is does this replace, just because you're doing an Arcana check on a gem, but does this replace detect magic? I don't think this should be able to tell you what's the magic. Like, I don't think this should be a replacement for detect magic, because detect magic would tell you what the spell,
it would say,
or what type of spell.
Magic. It would say the school of magic, but I agree.
I don't even think this should tell you that much. I could tell, I would like to say, like, if you had this and picked up a gem and said, hey, is there already a spell in this? Like, am I able to enchant it? You could tell if it can accept more, or if it's like, no, this is already being used, right? That's what I would think this would be as an Arcana check. It wouldn't tell you anything about the magic because you're not sensing the magic. You're just sensing its capability. That's what I would think the Arcana check would tell you.
I might be a little bit more flexible. Like, I definitely wouldn't be able to replace the identify spell.
Yeah.
The identify spell.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of as identify. I don't want this to replace identify, but maybe an equivalent of detect.
Like, it's not going to tell you how many charges is in a thing, but you can feel more about it. Like, I would say,
no, detect magic is fair. This would basically replace detect magic only with stone and gems. It's not detect magic on every magical item. It's only stone and gems. So that's fine.
And you still have to roll for it.
So what if it was that? What if
you still have to roll for it?
So why don't we just say, what if gem sense was you can cast, or you can basically, you could cast the equivalent of detect magic on any item, gem, or stone built.
Detect magic is not really something you cast on an item. It's something you just cast and then it's up for a minute. So
I would think it's more specific to, like, I want to know what this item has. Not I'm looking for magic. I want to pick this thing up and go, what can I get from it? And because it's a gem, I will be able to get like the school of magic that's inside of it, or if it's good or evil.
I would say that you could say that that's basically an Arcana check. Like, I would say if I'm picking this up and I'm asking a question about this thing, that's what an Arcana check is. But if you're talking about like just automatically knowing, I would just take the wording from detect magic and say, you can choose any stone or gem and insert wording here on this item.
And that's kind of what I was saying, is like, that's what I would think almost Gensem should be, is basically just detect magic for gems and stones.
Wouldn't even be mad at a low aura just always on Hey DM, can I tell if there's any like magical gems or stones nearby me, like by 10 feet? Like I wouldn't be super mad about that.
Oh, how about, what is it? Does it have to be magical? What if gem sense is literally you can sense any gem or type? You can sense all gems and stones within a certain radius.
You can just tell if there's gems or stones nearby,
and you can tell what type. Des, what do you think about that? What if gem sense was literally just an aura, like within 15 feet, you know every gem and type of stone within 15 feet of you. You are born with this sense. Like, it's just one of those, all of your extrasensory perceptions as a wolf, you just know every gem and stone within 15 feet. Imagine for a thief, someone in robes walks by and you're like, you have gems on you. You know what I mean? Like, someone like tries to present as royalty and you're like, fucking fake, plastic. Like, you ain't got a single gem on you, but you're all blinged out, right? Like, Des will add it to their notes. They'll consider it. I think that might be a little bit more approachable and way more usable. So yeah. So if you like that idea, go with it. I feel like, again, I'm not trying to say that what you had was bad. I liked the approach that you were doing. I just feel like from a universal point of view, easier language and something that anyone who looks at it immediately can come up with an idea is always better than someone who's like,
I get how I'm gonna use this. Yeah.
Not saying what you had was bad, just another example.
Okay.
Well, I feel like we spent a long time on that one. So we can move on. So make them shiny. I think so Mason's tools, again, I don't know what Mason's tools do.
So special tools include items you need to pursue a craft or trade, proficiency in the set of tools, add a proficiency bonus each time. So it talks about the components. You get like a trowel, whatever that is, a hammer, chisel, brushes.
So it's more carpentry based.
Kind of like, I imagine you're gonna make like a statue or something like that.
Yeah.
I would think,
or like a brick wall, like the stuff that you would do for a brick wall. So almost what I would want, make them shiny or build them up, and then you get a choice. Choose Mason or Jewelers.
Sure.
Because it does kind of feel like, again, we're doing stone and gems. I should have a choice between which one I want to prioritize. Again, I don't think there's any problem with having a choice of proficiency tool.
For sure, especially if it's between one of two. Like you see that all the time.
So moving on here. So next ability, dogs been casting all dogs' life. Okay.
Wild.
Dogs been casting all dogs' life. You can cast the Mold Earth cantrip and Distort Value spell with this trait using Wisdom as your spell casting ability for them. Once you cast Distort Value spell, you can't cast it again with this trait until you finish a short or long rest. So I know Distort Value. I'm pretty sure that one is you can adjust the apparent value of something by, I think, like
doubling the object's perceived value by adding illusory flourishes or polish, reducing its perceived value by half.
So so it's half or double, not a set value. So so half or double. Okay. And then Mold Earth, I don't know specifically. I don't know the verbiage of that one.
If you target a area of loose earth, you can instantly excavate it, move it along the ground, and deposit up to 5 feet away.
So basically build a grave, like instant grave.
You can cause shapes and colors to both appear on dirt or stone, spelling out words, creating images, or shaping patterns.
So it's for the stone carve, basically kind of like stone carving, earth carving kind of thing. That's I think what the idea is why you have it. Right.
If the dirt or stone target on the ground causes to be difficult, you can cause the target of dirt or stone to be difficult terrain. Alternatively, you can cause ground that has become difficult terrain and make it normal terrain. And that change lasts for an hour.
That's devastating. Just straight up, like someone does difficult terrain in combat and you're like, nah, be cool.
I'm curious. This is a cantrip.
Yeah.
That means I can just do it over and over and over again.
So that means anybody's spell that causes difficult terrain, you're just like, nah.
But it's only a 5 foot cube at a time.
But still, it's a cantrip. So, I mean, you could just make a step way through someone's difficult terrain. Though,
yes.
If with enough preparation, you could.
So, like, I imagine somebody's cast Spike Growth, right? Yeah. That's I'm pretty sure it's a 20-foot radius. So it's like 40 feet across. So if I want to get across that, that's 40 feet across. That's going to be 8 squares.
But if you have someone like in a situation where they're being like pulled through it or like at the edge, you could clear the space and let them get out without damage.
Yes.
That's what I'm just saying.
But
like,
that's why I don't think it's overpowered.
It's not overpowered, but it's good.
If you were a sorcerer, and you could like quicken spell this, that would be even more valuable. Theoretically, if you could quicken one and then cast a normal one, then you could double it up. Like, but it would be really hard to get through a large area of difficult terrain or to do anything other than help somebody on the outskirts of something and just narrowly escape. So I'm not mad at that.
So I get why this would have it, although I'm not sure I'm 100% in agreement that this is the most relatable. I see the connection. I just don't know if it's the strongest one. Because honestly, like in my mind, like I love that it kind of gives you like some basic magic casting, not that big deal there. But again, something that I'm born with, something that I'm like intertwined with like this element aspect. I almost would have done like stone to flesh or flesh to stone. Like that would have been an amazing ability.
Like
it should be a level 1 spell.
6th level spell.
Oh, that's a 6th level spell.
Stone to flesh. Now, if you're thinking of mold into stone or mold into earth or something like that, where you can like go into stone.
Oh, there's that one too. That could have been. But I didn't realize it was a 6th level spell of just doing like the stone flesh, because that would have been more along the lines. But yeah, you can't give them a 6th level spell that early.
Meld into stone is the one I was thinking of.
Meld to stone. I don't mind that one too. That one is kind of cool too. Like being able to become like part of the stone.
Stone skin.
Earth tremor could also work. Yeah, I think honestly, my favorite is meld into stone. That honestly makes the most sense. You because again, if you could feel stone, feel gems, this is part of like your race. The fact that you could touch a stone and just go into it fucking makes perfect sense. Like you literally, that is why you can sense them. You are literally one. Call it one with the stone.
I remember trying to use meld into stone and it not being as valuable as I thought it was going to be.
But it sounds like, I think it sounds perfect for this.
It does.
I mean, you can even say it's equal to a number of hours equal to your proficiency modifier. Then it grows with you, and that makes perfect sense for your race. Because then it still makes sense, right? Even at the lowest level, 2 hours is still fine. It's not game breaking, but it's still lower level. Because what you can do, you basically travel at like a half speed or something through stone.
No, so it just says you basically merge with stone for a second, but while you're in there, you can't see or hear anything.
Oh, this isn't even the travel through stone. This is even a weaker version than the one I remember.
So you step into a stone object or surface large enough for you to fully contain your body, melding yourself and all your equipment you carry with for the duration. Using your movement, you step into the stone at a point you can touch. Nothing of your presence remains visible or otherwise detectable by non-magical senses. While merged with the stone, you can't see what occurs outside, and any wisdom perception checks made to hear what's going on outside are made with disadvantage. You remain aware of the passage of time and can cast spells on yourself while merged with the stone. You can use your movement to leave the stone where you entered, which ends the spell. Otherwise, you can't move. So it's really only useful if you have some, like, say you had a familiar outside hanging out in the room. You meld in there and you can like see through your familiar's eyes, and then they don't know you're there, type deal.
Gotcha. Because Mold Earth, while it kind of makes sense, I just feel like it's not connected enough to like the senses. It's more of like being able to control it. But I get the idea of being able to like mark stone and like do other things. Distort value, again, I feel like this one isn't a stretch. I just feel like it's not even a reach. It feels like you're choosing this one because it fits, not because it makes sense, but because
it's a placement, I would call it. Yeah. And I get it, and it does fit. I do see it. Again, it's just, why would your magic take you there?
Right. While I'm not against giving them magic, I feel like there could be something more.
There could be another way to do it.
I'm not, off the top of my head, I just don't know.
So there's stone skin, which is the armor one, I'm pretty sure.
And
but then there's flesh to stone.
Oh, so flesh to stone is actually like the Medusa. That's like you turn a creature into stone.
Right. So stone skin, you touch a willing creature and their skin becomes hard to touch, and they have resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage.
What is that level? That's the one I'm talking about.
That's 4th level.
That's 4th level. That's what I was thinking should be done here, right? And what if you got to do that, but like, because how long does that one last?
It lasts for an hour.
What if you just had it last for like a round or two? What if that was the doled down version where you get to cast that, but it only lasts for a very short period of time?
I would say
like 1 round.
I would say it would be cool if you could activate this. It only works on yourself.
Yes.
And
100% it only works on yourself.
It lasts for a minute, and you can use it once a day.
I'm totally okay with 1 minute once a day. Because that's what I'm thinking, right? Like the idea that I can sense stone. I basically was born
Yes.
with this sense. That's the exact spell I was thinking. I'm not flesh to stone, but yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
stone skin being the idea that you literally are imbued with the ability to just your skin turns to stone for a hot minute, literally a hot minute. And
Yeah,
literally,
exactly.
I love the idea because it's all damage or just bludgeoning damage.
Bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Physical damage.
Des,
Just like a barbarian.
what do you think about that, Des? Instead of doing the mold earth and distort value, what if they got stone skin for 1 minute instead?
On themselves.
On themselves only. I think that sounds better. Not saying that these don't work, but I think that sounds better. And honestly, I'd be way more about that. Because thinking not only could I sense gems and stones, which just sounds cool, but then thinking like, wait, I just turn into stone real quick, like, oh, I could use that shit. Like in battle.
Even if you worded it like your skin turned to like diamond or something like that, and it's still the same effect, but you could just be like, hey,
you could choose
depending on
stone
what
or
you
gem
are.
affiliation, and then you could choose to like.
I think it'd be cool if you like chose its visual attribute like at the time you chose the race. So it's like, hey, this is what mine looks like. This is me. Like, I think that would kind of add to the personalization of this
I don't even mind
thing.
if it was literally just a one or the other. When you choose this race, choose stone or gems. So you get to sense stones or sense gems. Your skin turns to stone or it turns to gem. Like basically, it's more of a which side of the choice do you lead on? Instead of having all of it, you could have one affiliation or the other. But either way, I do like the idea.
But now I'm thinking of something slightly different. Now, this might not be for this build, but I do really like this idea that instead of just having it like your whole skin being that way for a minute, imagine if like as a reaction to getting hit with certain damage, like a certain part of your body would like turn to stone or turn to diamond and like either reduce or you gain resistance to the triggering damage or something like that. Just to I like
just like a different visual.
Yeah, just as another way to like imagine the ability to use this. It's just like, hey, like I put my arm up in front of me and it took the brunt of that damage and it was like stone for this moment or whatever the case may be. It's just like a super quick just blocking damage and like reducing whatever it is you would have taken, you know. I like that. Again, that visual just came into my mind. I thought it would be really cool.
So yeah, I don't know. That would be my hot take on that one. All right. And then we finally get to the description. So this should have been the beginning, but let's talk about the description of the diamond dog. So playing as a diamond dog or playing a diamond dog. Diamond dogs are usually skittish, subterranean people wary of the outside world. Again, even better, this kind of like instant reaction to turn to stone.
They said subterranean, which really explains the extended dark vision that we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. I also like this idea of being skittish too. Imagine if you also flavored it that in this state, like again, you could add this to where, for 1 minute, once per day, you can do stone to flesh or stone skin, which gives you all these benefits. But you can even add in a small little thing of while in this state, you don't have to breathe. Therefore, you can also state in when not moving, you look like a statue.
You could be mistaken for a statue.
So like in this form for 1 minute, you don't have to breathe. And if you choose not to move, you make 0 movements. Like you can truly not move. So again, being skittish, imagine kind of like, I think like the Doctor Who, like, Weeping Angels. You're traveling through this cave system, right? Your subterranean cave, and you bring the light up and all of a sudden there's this wolf feature that's just like this. It's like, why is there a statue here? And then you look away and then you hear something, you skittish and it's gone. But it does that to protect itself, but also to make you think that it's not there until you look away and then it's fucking gone. Imagine that little extra bit of not breathing for 1 minute. That's not hugely game breaking, but gas. I'm not going to breathe for 1 minute. I can walk out. I'm going to drag my unconscious party out of here, out of the noxious knockout gas. Like, you could have some fun with that.
That could be kind of cool.
There you go, Des. More ideas for you. I kind of like that. Okay, so we know that they're skittish. Oh, sorry. So Diamond Dog's culture is based on social wealth. So not just physical material, but how much an individual has and can help the community. So it's more about, it's not just that you have a lot of stuff, but is what you have beneficial and are you using it in a beneficial way? The more an individual has aided those around them, the more they are offered by those around them. So it's very much a get what you give in, or take out what you put in. Diamond dogs speak in an impersonal third person, referring to themselves simply as dog. Dog will help you. This dog has been mining all dog's life. Hence, the dog's been casting all dog's life.
Got it.
Hence, by that notoriety. Okay.
That's clever.
That's interesting. Great for NPCs. I feel like that could get difficult or annoying as hell with a player.
Well, what I was talking about is there could be a way for you to explain why you don't talk like this. So I would say it doesn't necessarily have to mean that every dog of this race speaks like this.
Yeah, this is just their player, when you go to their hometown, this is how they will all speak. But it's not necessarily required.
Like if you want to choose to talk a different way, like
it's like an accent. You can lose an accent.
Exactly what I was thinking.
You can lose an accent, but you don't necessarily have to, but you can very easily not indulge in.
Curious how you feel about Kenku then, because I'm just now thinking about Kenku. Kenku do not have the ability to speak. They only have the ability to mimic other people's speak. So the only thing that they can say, they're literally parrots.
Yeah.
They can only just repeat a saying that.
So like, I don't mind those, but to me, it's the same thing as if you were going to do like a themed game like for Marvel and someone wanted to play Groot. Fine idea, only good in the right person's hands. Like, because Kenku could be a really unique and fascinating race, but in the wrong person's hands, it could just be one of those, we all just kind of know you don't talk, but we overlook, like, it's one of those things where you just kind of forget about it. Like it's there, it's part of the story, but we're not really like indulging in it. Whereas if you have the right kind of person who knows how to act and inflect, that could be a lot of fun. Because I mean, think about how much range Groot has as a character when all he ever says is, I am Groot. But
sure.
The range at which you can say I am Groot in a questionable and excited and sad, and with how other people interact with Groot, you get the reference, right? You get context. Sure. If you have a player who could do that, who could be like, are you guys hungry? Be like, you guys hungry? Versus, you guys hungry? Sure. You guys hungry? That's all you have to do. It's a parrot. They have to say the same thing, but not necessarily in the same way. And if you have a player that can do that, that game can be super fun. Sure. Because they can be the Groot of the party.
Honestly, I've never had it happen. But the first thing that I imagine is somebody with just like a soundboard and they just like are pressing like soundboard buttons that are a bunch of different quotes from either other party members that have said different things or literally from like just like random media.
I don't know enough about the Kenku if they can repeat anything they've ever heard or only what we recently has been said. I don't know if they can
anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Imagine Bumblebee. It's exactly like Bumblebee. Bumblebee can only speak in idioms based of that it can find from like the radio or from media or for things like that.
So it's more like it's a race based on quoting.
Yes,
quoting others, not parroting.
Yes,
big difference.
You're making full sentences. You're making your own thoughts, but you're using it in a way that that comes from other people's. Like that's all you have to select from. That's your alphabet.
Yeah,
so to speak.
Right. Like it can be done, but again, in the hands of a right kind of person. I think that's it for this race. So I'm really liking where this race is going. I won't say it's groundbreaking by any measures, but it's very creative and very unique. And I'm liking the idea of getting away from what feels like, one thing I will say, my favorite part about this is it's getting away from feeling like we're creating things so people will get them to have the most powerful character. And this is one of those things where we're creating this to have an enriched character. Like this is something that I'm not choosing this because, oh my gosh, like Rampage is just going to like blow out like combat. And I'm getting gem sense because I'm going to be the best wizard. Like, no, none of these things are going to greatly excel me. But Rampage, if I'm a combat based fighter, fucking phenomenal that I get an extra attack on a bonus action. So I really like the ideas here. I think that these are definitely leaning in more to the play of the character and not so much the doing of the character, not what the character can do, but how I'm going to play it. So definitely love it there. I think the biggest thing is I think I would just change personally myself. I think I would change gem sense to be a little bit more feature full on the idea that, we've lived in the subterranean. So we should have some sort of like unnatural sense, but I don't necessarily think that unnatural sense should and has to, or even directly equates to knowledge of gems. To make them shiny, I don't think Mason tools is a bad thing. I wouldn't mind a choice between Masons and jewelry tools. I wouldn't even mind both. And then Dogs McCastin, All a Dog's Life. Like I said, I would love to have been able to suggest better spells, because I think there could be better options. I don't think there are, because I don't know.
Sure.
I think there could be better options, but I'm not upset with either of these. I feel like they might, especially with distort value, I feel like it's a little bit of a push, like a little bit of a shoehorn, but it makes sense. Still makes sense. I still like Stone Skin. I think that might have been better. And then adding the ability of Stone Skin, like you said, for a minute. And then I wouldn't mind adding you don't have to breathe, and you can, in this form, you don't have to breathe for 1 minute, and you can be perfectly still as if like a Adding those two little tiny features, I think would make this just so much more intriguing for someone to play. So I think those are it. Everything else, no changes. Description was awesome. The lore is awesome. I think there's a lot that anybody could pick up here. And I think it's doable and usable. My only concern is that, again, as written, gem sense, I think, is the only consideration or the only hesitation, in terms of, again, if I'm imagining players just kind of flipping through and reading through these real quick, I don't think anything on here would dissuade them from choosing it, except for gem sense. And it's just the wording. I feel like it doesn't connect the player enough to what they can do with it, and therefore there's a hesitation there.
Sure.
But other than that, it's great. I like it. I think it's really cool. So I think it's gonna get a 7. Yeah, it's really strong. I mean, really, I think gem sense is the number one thing that needs to be changed. And personally, I think I would change casting magic to more of like the innate magic type of things. That's my only changes. So I think it's a solid 7.
Awesome.
Des, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope we gave you some good ideas to consider. Or at least we gave you confirmation that you made what you enjoyed, but I hope that we gave you something to think about. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for submitting this.